I used to think my biggest risk was overdrafting my checking account because I forgot an autopay. That was the kind of person I was. Organized, boring, proud of it. I'm 42, I keep a spreadsheet for everything, and I've always believed that if you stay calm and do the math, life eventually cooperates. I work as a closing coordinator for a mid-sized title company in suburban Ohio. Not glamorous, but steady. The job is basically making sure money moves where it's supposed to move and signatures land where they're supposed to land. People joke that I'm the paperwork guy. I lean into it. So when I say I witnessed a deal I wasn't supposed to witness, I don't mean I stumbled into a cartel exchange or anything. I mean I saw two people do something with money that made my stomach drop, because it was the kind of thing that looks normal until you understand what it costs. And then I got handed a sealed envelope like I was part of it. It was a Thursday in late September, the kind of day where the air is still warm but the light feels thin. We had a last-minute closing that got moved off-site because the seller didn't want to come into an office. That happens more than you'd think. People are paranoid or embarrassed or they owe someone money and don't want to be seen. The address was a diner off Route 20. I got there early with my bag. Loan package, notary stamp, prepaid FedEx envelope, all the usual. I figured I'd sit in a booth, order coffee, and do the boring part. The seller arrived first. He was mid-50s, tan in a way that screamed, "I don't work inside," and he kept rubbing his hands together like he just washed them. He slid into the booth without ordering anything. Then the buyer came in. I knew her. Not like, "Oh, I've seen you around." I knew her voice. I knew the slope of her shoulders. I knew the way she always carried a tote bag like it weighed nothing. My wife, Tessa. My first reaction was logistical. Maybe she was meeting a client. She worked in business development for a construction company. That's vague enough that it could include anything. I didn't wave. I didn't get up. I just watched her walk in because my brain was doing that calm triage thing it does. Identify variables. Gather info. Don't jump to conclusions. She sat across from the seller, angled her body so she could see the front door, and didn't look around like someone who expected to be recognized. She pulled a manila folder from her tote and slid it across the table. The seller opened it, flipped a few pages, then looked at her like he didn't trust what he was seeing. She leaned in and said something I couldn't hear, but I saw the seller's face change. He nodded once, tight. Then Tessa reached into her tote and set down a white envelope. Thick, not bulky like cash, but heavier than a letter. She didn't slide it across. She set it down like it was a weight and she was done holding it. The seller picked it up, pressed it between his fingers, and this is the part one can't unsee. He held it up to the light like he expected to see a silhouette of bills. I told myself, could be earnest money, could be a cashier's check, could be documents. Then the seller opened it under the table. I know what cash looks like when someone thinks they're being discreet. There's this subtle ripple when you thumb through it. The seller did that fast like a nervous tick. Tessa didn't smile. She just stared at him and waited. When he was done, he put the envelope back in his jacket, and he slid a smaller envelope to her. Not sealed. It was one of those plain ones you'd buy in a pack of 50, slightly bent at the corners. She peeked inside, then tucked it into her folder. They sat there for maybe another minute, talking low. The seller kept shaking his head like he was still processing. Tessa stayed still, composed, almost practiced. That's when I stood up. Not dramatically, just like, okay, I'm here for a closing and this booth is booked by my own spouse, apparently. I walked over and said, "Hey, Tessa." She looked up, and for half a second her face did this unguarded thing. Surprise, yes, but also calculation. Like she was flipping through mental files. "Oh," she said too lightly. "What are you doing here?" "I'm the notary for the closing," I said, and I hated how normal my voice sounded. "For this property." The seller went pale. Tessa didn't. She turned to him and said, "It's fine. He's fine." Then she looked at me and smiled the way you smile at a stranger you need to keep calm. "Can we talk outside?" We stepped into the parking lot. The diner smelled like grease and old coffee, and the asphalt was warm under my shoes. I remember all of it because my body was still acting like this was a workday and not the moment my marriage started tilting. Tessa said, "This isn't what it looks like." I didn't say anything. I just waited. That's my default. Let people fill silence with truth. She exhaled hard and said, "It's an investment thing. Private deal. I didn't tell you because you would freak out." "That was cash," I said. "It was a deposit," she snapped, then immediately softened. "It's not illegal." "I'm literally here to make sure money moves legally," I said. "You're meeting a seller offsite with cash under the table. That's not standard." Her eyes flicked back to the diner windows. "We're not doing anything wrong, and I swear it's for us." "For us?" I repeated, because that phrase has so much manipulation packed into it when someone's already decided they're right. She reached into her tote and pulled out a sealed envelope. This one was thicker than the one she'd given him, and it had my name written on it in her handwriting. Not in a cute way, in a label the file way. "Take this," she said. "Don't open it here. Just take it." "What is it?" "Proof," she said, and her mouth tightened. "That I'm not ruining our life. That I'm fixing it." I took it because I didn't know what else to do. The paper was stiff. Felt like it held more than paper. Then she touched my arm and said, "Please don't do anything stupid at the table. Just get the signatures and we'll be done." We went back inside like two people returning from a smoke break. Not a financial crime scene. The closing itself was routine on the surface. IDs, signatures, dates. But my hands were sweating so much I kept wiping them on my pants when no one was looking. The seller signed like someone signing a confession. Tessa signed like someone signing a menu. They didn't look at each other once while I notarized. When it was done, the seller stood up too fast, left cash for the coffee he never drank, and walked out without saying goodbye. Tessa lingered just long enough to lean close and whisper, "Tonight, we'll talk tonight." Then she left too, and suddenly I was alone in a diner booth with a signed deed transfer and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. Back in my car, I sat there for a full minute with the sealed envelope in my lap. I didn't open it right away because part of me still believed in procedural order. Like if I followed the rules, whatever was inside would have to make sense. I drove back to the office first, dropped the docs, logged the file, answered an email about a missing initial like my world wasn't cracking. Then I went home, sat at the kitchen table, and slid my finger under the envelope flap. Inside were copies, not originals. Copies of documents that were absolutely, undeniably valuable because they were legal keys to money. There was a life insurance policy declaration page with a death benefit just under $1. $2 million issued on my name. There was also a notarized assignment of benefits form, signed by me. Except it wasn't signed by me. It was my signature, yes. The loops, the slant. But it wasn't from my hand. It was too smooth, like someone had traced it slowly. Then there was a line item breakdown of a debt consolidation loan. $178,400 with my name listed as the borrower and our house as collateral. I stared at that number until it stopped looking real. Because we did not have a debt consolidation loan. We had a mortgage and a car payment and a couple credit cards that we paid down like responsible adults. And then I found the last page. A beneficiary change request for that life insurance policy. Primary beneficiary, Tessa. Contingent beneficiary, Reese Mallory. I read that name 3 times. I didn't know any Reese Mallory. At first I thought this was some kind of scam packet, like Tessa was trying to show me she'd discovered identity theft. But the documents were too specific, too connected, too intentional. I did the calm thing. I opened my laptop and pulled our credit report. That's when I found it. The loan was real. It had been taken out 8 months earlier. And the payments were current because someone had been paying it. When Tessa came home, she was humming, like a person who just finished a chore. She set her keys down, glanced at my face, and stopped. "You opened it," she said quietly. I held up the insurance page. "Explain." She sat down slowly, like she was lowering herself into cold water. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I knew this would be bad. But you forged my signature." "I had to," she said, and then flinched at her own words. "Listen, it's not... I didn't do it to hurt you. My voice stayed level, which I'm weirdly proud of in hindsight. Then why? She rubbed her forehead. Because we were drowning and you didn't even know it. We weren't. Your mom. She cut in. Your mom was drowning. I froze. What does my mom have to do with? Medical bills, she said. The rehab place after her fall. The stuff Medicare didn't cover. The home health aid she insisted she didn't need but absolutely did. My mom would have told me. She told me, Tessa said. She begged me not to tell you. She said you'd try to pay for it and ruin our retirement. I felt something cold move through my chest. My mom had always treated me like the responsible one. Like I was the family's emergency fund in human form. And she'd gone around me. Tessa leaned forward, eyes shiny. I found a way to cover it. A real way. An investment. I needed capital. So you took a loan against our house. It's temporary, she said fast. And the insurance, that's just protection. It's normal for borrowers. It's not normal to forge it. She swallowed. I didn't forge everything. That sentence sat there like a bomb. Tessa told me about Reese Mallory like she was admitting to buying an expensive purse. He's my cousin, she said. Technically, on my dad's side. You've never mentioned him. Because he's complicated, she said. He does private lending. He fronts money for deals banks won't touch. He's not illegal, he's just aggressive. I laughed once, sharp. Aggressive. Like loan sharks with LinkedIn? She winced. He helped me set things up. The paperwork. I didn't know it would include stuff with your name. I thought it was just to move money quickly. I held up the beneficiary page. Why is he contingent beneficiary on my life insurance policy? Her face went blank for a second. Then she said, that was his requirement. I stared at her. So if I die, your cousin gets paid. If I die, she corrected quickly. If something happens and it's just a safety net. For him, because he's taking risk. By putting $1 million incentive on my life. It's not like that, she said, voice rising. God, you always make it sound. No, I said, and my calm finally cracked. You made it sound like that. You met someone in a diner and gave him cash. You put our house up without telling me. You forged my signature. And you put a stranger on my insurance. She started crying then, not dramatic sobs, but quiet leakage. I did it for your mom. That's when the first real twist landed in me. Not just the documents, but the emotional math. My wife wasn't panicking. She'd been planning. And my mother had been in on it. The next morning, I drove to my mom's house with the folder of copies like I was delivering evidence to a jury. My mom answered in her robe, hair thin and messy, the bruise from her fall still faintly yellow on her cheek. She smiled when she saw me, then saw my face. Oh, she said. Honey. I walked past her into the living room. How much? She sat down slowly. It's not. How much? I repeated, and it came out like a plea. She closed her eyes. 87,000, she whispered. That's what's left. There was more. Paid some. I sold my car. My hands went numb. Why didn't you tell me? Because you're you, she said, like that explained everything. You would have emptied your savings. You would have taken a second job. You would have done that thing where you pretend it's fine and then you get resentful later. That hit because she wasn't wrong. I put the insurance page in front of her. Did you know about this? Her eyes moved over the numbers. I watched her jaw tighten at the $1 million amount, and I realized she hadn't seen it. She hadn't known the full shape of what Tessa had done. I knew about the loan, she said softly. Tessa told me she found a way. She said it would all be paid back after the flip. The flip? I echoed. My mom's eyes flicked away. The property. So it wasn't just medical bills. It was a real estate deal. A flip. A gamble. And my wife and my mother had both decided to gamble with my name. Did what I always do when I don't know what to feel. I made calls. First to our mortgage company. Then to the lender listed on the consolidation loan. Then to our insurance agent. Every call peeled back another layer. The loan wasn't just collateralized by our home. It was structured with penalties that kicked in after 12 months. Massive ones. The payments were low now because it was interest only, a teaser. After the first year, the monthly payment would spike like a trap. The life insurance policy wasn't normal borrower protection. It had been purchased through a third-party broker, not our agent. The beneficiary change form had been submitted online with a scanned signature. And the property from the diner closing, it was part of a chain. The seller hadn't just been selling to Tessa. He'd been selling out from under a lien. I pulled the county records. There was an existing claim on the property from a contractor dispute. A lawsuit. The property was tangled, and anyone who touched it was playing with fire. I sat at my desk at work, staring at public records like they were tarot cards, and I felt something else creep in. Embarrassment. Because I worked in this world. I should have seen it. I should have known. But it didn't look like fraud when it wore my wife's face. That night, I confronted Tessa with actual numbers, actual terms, actual consequences. Not vibes. Not, this feels wrong. I laid it out like a presentation. If we don't refinance out of this loan before month 12, we can't afford the payment, I said. We lose the house. We won't, she insisted. The flip closes before then. The flip is tied up in litigation, I said. There's a lien. There's a suit. Did you know that? Her mouth opened, then closed. Reese said it was fine. Reese profits if it's not fine, I said. He's literally listed to get paid if something happens to me. She slammed her palm on the table. Stop saying it like that. Then stop making it true. She stared at me for a long moment and then, second major twist, she said very quietly. I didn't put him as contingent beneficiary. I blinked. What? I didn't, she repeated. He gave me the forms. I signed what I thought I had to sign, but I didn't type his name in. I didn't add him. Took me a second to understand what she was saying. Someone else had added him. Someone with access. Someone who wanted leverage. My skin went cold all over again, because suddenly this wasn't just my wife making reckless choices. It was someone else editing the consequences. Tessa's voice shook. He said it was just paperwork. He said it was standard. I didn't know until you showed me. For one brief, stupid moment, I felt relief. Like, okay, she's not completely monstrous. She's just desperate and naive. That was my false resolution. The part where I thought the crisis was just a financial mess we could untangle if we moved fast. I told her, we're going to a lawyer. Tomorrow. She nodded, wiping her face. Okay, I'll fix it. And I believed her. The lawyer was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had seen every flavor of marital disaster money could make. She spread the documents out on her desk like she was dealing cards. This is bad, she said flatly. But it's fixable if you act immediately. She recommended we file fraud reports on the forged signatures, contact the insurance company to freeze beneficiary changes, and refinance out of the predatory loan if possible. She also told me, gently, that I should consider separating finances until trust was rebuilt. That last part felt like someone suggesting I amputate a limb to treat an infection. On the way out, Tessa squeezed my hand in the parking lot and said, "Thank you for not leaving me. I didn't say the obvious thing. I'm not staying because I trust you. I'm staying because I'm trying to save the house." That afternoon, I went back to work and asked our underwriter to pull every file connected to the property Tessa bought. I framed it as quality control. She didn't question it. And that's when I found the third major twist, hiding in plain sight. The initial seller from the diner wasn't just selling to Tessa. He was selling to a shell LLC that Tessa didn't own. The buyer name on the final recorded deed wasn't Tessa. It was Mallory Holdings, LLC. The signature on the buyer line? Mine. Not my forged scribble. My actual signature from a document I'd signed months earlier at home. Something Tessa had slid into a stack of routine paperwork while I was cooking dinner, barely looking. I remembered it now. A page with a highlighted line. Her saying, "Babe, I just need your signature for the insurance thing." I had signed away something without reading it. I sat there in my cubicle, the office lights buzzing, and I realized the worst part wasn't that I'd been tricked. It was that I'd been easy to trick because I trusted the person handing me the pen. I went home that evening with the recorded deed printout in my bag. The house smelled like garlic and simmering tomatoes, Tessa's comfort food apology routine. She was humming again. I put the paper on the counter. She saw the LLC name and went still. "I didn't know it would record that way," she whispered. "Stop," I said, and my voice sounded older than I felt. "Stop saying you didn't know. You handed a man cash in a diner. You took out a loan against our house. You changed my insurance. At some point, I didn't know stops being an excuse and starts being the whole problem." She slid down into a chair, face crumpling. "He said it had to be in the LLC for tax reasons." "His LLC," I said. "Not yours." She covered her mouth with her hand. "He said he'd add me after the renovation. He said it was temporary." I stared at her and saw the shape of it. Reese wasn't helping her. He was using her desperation like a handle. And then the fourth twist arrived, not in a document but in a text message. My mom. "Honey, I'm sorry. Reese came by today. He said if you cause trouble, he'll tell the state I hid assets and they'll take my house." I read it twice, then a third time. My mother's house was in play now. Not legally maybe, but psychologically. He'd found her weak spot. Fear of losing what little independence she had left. I looked at Tessa and said, "He's threatening my mom." Tessa's eyes widened. "He wouldn't." "He already did," I said. And in that moment, something in me snapped into clarity that felt disgusting. This wasn't about love or helping family. It was about control through money. And we'd all participated. Tessa by chasing a windfall, my mom by hiding debt, me by signing blindly because it was easier than asking hard questions. I wasn't the responsible one in control. I was the guy who thought control meant not looking too closely. I wish I could tell you this ends with Reese getting arrested and us learning a moral lesson and everything being okay. What actually happened is messier and more humiliating. We did file fraud reports. The insurance company froze the beneficiary change after a lot of phone calls and me faxing documents like it was 1998. The lender investigated the forged signatures, but still expected payments in the meantime. The lawyer sent letters. Reese's responses were polite, slow, and full of plausible deniability. Then, a week later, I got another sealed envelope. It was slipped under our front door in the middle of the day. No return address, just my name in block letters. Inside were printed photos, grainy, time-stamped, of me at the diner booth notarizing that closing. Photos of me holding the papers. Photos of my notary stamp in my hand. Along with a typed note, "You were there. You signed. Don't confuse regret with fraud." And then, folded beneath the photos, were copies of bank transfers I'd never seen before. Payments made from an account in my mom's name, small amounts, steady, into an account labeled Mallory Consulting. My mom had been paying him directly, not because she believed in the flip, because she was scared. I drove to her house and she opened the door already crying, like she'd been waiting for me to find out. "I didn't want you to hate her," she said. "I didn't want you to hate me." I sat on her couch, the same couch I'd sat on as a kid when she'd tell me money was tight but we'd be fine. And I realized something that still makes my throat close up. Money wasn't just causing conflict. Money was the language we'd been using instead of honesty for years. Tessa came clean in pieces. Not all at once. Not heroically. She admitted she'd been meeting Reese for months. That she liked how powerful it felt to have someone treat her like she could play bigger. That she'd started with my mom's bills and then got addicted to the idea of flipping our whole life into a better one with one big score. And I had to admit my piece too. I'd built my identity on being stable, which meant I avoided anything that threatened the image. I didn't look at statements. I didn't ask questions when Tessa got vague. I signed papers because it was easier than having a fight. We didn't lose the house, not yet. We refinanced with help from my brother. Another humiliation I swallowed because pride doesn't pay interest. My mom sold her house and moved into a small apartment near my aunt, because the fear of losing it became the lever that moved everything else. Tessa and I are not together, but not fully divorced either. She's in an apartment across town. We meet once a week with a mediator and talk like two people negotiating the sale of a shared asset, because in a way that's what we are now. Sometimes I still think about that first sealed envelope. How it felt heavy in my hand, like it contained certainty. Like documents could explain people. It didn't explain people. It exposed them. The part that permanently altered my understanding isn't that my wife was capable of betrayal. It's that I was capable of being bought off by comfort, by the illusion that if I stayed calm and didn't look too closely, I could keep my life clean. Turns out money doesn't just ruin people. Sometimes it reveals what you were willing to ignore for free.